Good evening, America. Tonight, Iran's own president stood in front of his own people and called the agreement his government just reached with the United States a major victory for his country. Not a compromise, not a ceasefire, a major victory. And on the very same day, thousands of miles away in Switzerland, the Vice President of the United States stood in front of American reporters and described in his own words exactly what happens to Iran's frozen money under this deal. He said if Iranian assets are ever unfrozen, they are going to go to make American farmers richer and to feed the Iranian people. He called it a classic Trump deal. He said it is great for our people, great for the people of Iran. Tonight, we are going to put those two statements side by side, Iran's president calling this a major victory and America's vice president calling it a classic Trump deal. And we are going to walk through exactly what was agreed in Switzerland over the past 48 hours, what it means for the Strait of Hormuz, what it means for Lebanon, and why a deconfliction mechanism quietly built into this agreement has reportedly sent Israel's own prime minister into what Israeli media is calling a state of panic. Stay with me, because tonight's developments are the clearest signal yet of who actually walked away from these talks with what they wanted. Let us start with the talks themselves, because the 48 hours that just unfolded at the Bergenstock Resort near Lake Lucerne in Switzerland were as dramatic as anything this war has produced. And they began under conditions that made success look almost impossible. The weekend began with chaos. Iran's delegation walked out of the Swiss venue Sunday after President Trump, in an expletive-laden outburst, threatened to blow the proverbial out of Iran, seize the Strait of Hormuz, and take over the country. He told Iranian officials directly, "You close the strait and you won't have a country." He said, "You won't even make it back to your country. We'll take over the rest of the country." He posted afterward that Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon from causing trouble. Iran's state news agency reported the talks were abandoned after what it called an insulting message by the United States president. Iran's chief negotiator, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of Iran's parliament, responded with his own warning, saying they would do better to be careful with their statements, that Iran's armed forces are ready to respond to them in a different manner, and that no matter what they say, we are the ones who act. The Iranian delegation refused to even join a photo with Vice President J.D. Vance. For a few hours on Sunday night, this entire diplomatic process looked like it was collapsing exactly the way every previous round of talks in this war had collapsed before it. And then something changed. By Sunday evening, there had been no reports of further Israeli strikes or continued fighting in Lebanon, with some residents of southern Lebanon cautiously trickling back to their homes. The American delegation, led overnight by special envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, continued meeting with the Iranians through the night at the resort. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir remained in Switzerland to keep the sessions moving as mediators, alongside Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani. By Monday morning, the entire tone had reversed. Vice President Vance, speaking to reporters Monday, said the talks had made very good progress, though he acknowledged there had been threatening and whining over the weekend. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said separately that the talks had yielded major progress. And Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian went even further. He told his own country that the agreement reached on what is now being called the Lebanon deconfliction plan was a major victory for Iran. Now, let us understand exactly what that deconfliction plan actually is, because it may be the single most consequential development of this entire week, and it goes far beyond a simple ceasefire announcement. Vance explained that a new deconfliction mechanism was established during the talks in Bergenstock. According to reporting from Israeli outlet Channel 12, this new arrangement would replace the mechanism brokered back in 2024 under the Biden administration, which had included Israel, Lebanon, the United States, France, and the United Nations as its monitoring parties. The new body replacing it would be made up of the United States, Iran, Lebanon, Qatar, and Pakistan. Read that list again and notice who is missing: Israel. The country that has been fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon for the past 3.5 months, the country whose military operations in southern Lebanon have been the single biggest obstacle to every previous round of Iran peace talks, is not included in the new body that will oversee whether the Lebanon ceasefire is being respected. Iran is on that list. Israel is not. This is why, according to Channel 12's own reporting citing a senior Israeli official, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly panicking over this new mechanism. The report states plainly that the new Lebanon deconfliction mechanism could limit Israel's freedom of action and remove it from the oversight framework entirely. Netanyahu has launched diplomatic efforts to protect Israel's interests in response. Think about what that means in practical terms. For months, this channel has documented Israel's position that it will continue striking Hezbollah whenever it judges a threat exists, that it will not withdraw from southern Lebanon until its security needs are fully met, and that Israeli officials have insisted publicly that Israel is not subject to the United States. Now, a deconfliction body has been created to manage exactly that conflict, and Israel is not one of the 5 members sitting at that table. The United States, Iran, Lebanon, Qatar, and Pakistan will be deciding how disputes over Lebanon get resolved going forward. And the country actually conducting military operations on that battlefield has been left outside the room. That single structural fact, more than any press conference statement, may explain exactly why Iran's president is calling this a major victory. Iran spent months insisting that any peace deal include genuine protection for Lebanon and for Hezbollah, its most important regional ally, against unchecked Israeli military action. If the new deconfliction mechanism genuinely limits Israel's ability to strike Lebanon without consequence and does so through a body where Iran has a seat and Israel does not, then Iran has achieved through diplomacy something it could not achieve through 110 days of war, protection for its proxy network, with America's own signature on the document that provides it. Now let us turn to the second major story from today, the one involving frozen Iranian money, because Vance's own explanation of how this mechanism works deserves to be heard in complete detail. Speaking at his Monday press briefing in Switzerland, Vance explained that Jared Kushner had worked with Qatar's negotiating team to design what he called a very interesting solution regarding any future unfreezing of Iranian assets. Under the proposal, if Iranian assets are ever unfrozen, the United States and Qatar would both have approval authority over the entire process. And the money itself, according to Vance, would be directed toward a specific purpose. He said, and these are his exact words, that money is going to go to make American soy, American corn, and American wheat for the benefit of the Iranian people. He called this arrangement a classic Trump deal. He said, that's great for our people. Great for the people of Iran, and fundamentally, again, will contribute to this regional security architecture that we've built. Let us sit with that for a moment, because it is one of the more remarkable financial arrangements described in this entire war. Iran's own frozen money, money that belongs to the Iranian government and Iranian financial institutions, would not simply be released to Iran to spend as it chooses. Instead, under joint American and Qatari oversight, that money would be used specifically to purchase American agricultural exports, soybeans, corn, and wheat, which would then be shipped to feed the Iranian population. From Washington's perspective, this is being framed as a humanitarian guarantee, ensuring that unfrozen Iranian funds cannot be diverted toward weapons, missiles, or funding for Hezbollah and other regional proxies, while simultaneously creating a new export market for American farmers who have faced years of trade disruption. From a purely economic lens, it is genuinely clever. It threads a needle between Iran's demand for access to its own money and America's demand that the money not fund terrorism. But here is the political complication that this arrangement creates. And it goes back to a controversy this channel has already covered in detail. Just days ago, Vance confirmed on CBS that Iran could have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund, then walked that figure back entirely on Fox News the same evening, with the White House eventually renaming the entire concept an investment fund rather than reconstruction. Today's announcement about soy, corn, and wheat purchases is, functionally, a more specific and more concrete version of exactly that same concept. It is American money, indirectly, flowing through a mechanism that touches Iran's frozen assets, benefiting both Iranian civilians and the American agricultural sector simultaneously. Whether this version of the arrangement draws the same backlash that the $300 billion figure drew from the Lincoln Project, from Adam Kinzinger, and from MAGA commentators like Jackson Hinkle remains to be seen. But the underlying tension, money tied to Iran moving in some form, regardless of how it is structured or labeled, is exactly the issue that has already proven most explosive among Trump's own political base. There was also significant nuclear news to come out of today's talks that deserves direct attention. Vance announced that Iran has agreed to admit International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors back into the country, calling it a major milestone toward ending Tehran's nuclear weapons program. This is the first confirmed movement on the nuclear inspection question since the IAEA was shut out of Iran when the war began in February. If genuinely implemented, IAEA inspectors regaining access to Iranian nuclear facilities would represent real, verifiable progress on one of the most dangerous, unresolved questions of this entire conflict, the question of what has actually happened to Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium since the war's opening strikes. Vance was careful to note that while a very good foundation for a successful final deal had been laid, there is still a lot to do, particularly around demining the Strait of Hormuz to help ensure shipping traffic fully recovers. That brings us to the Strait of Hormuz itself, where the contradiction this channel reported on just 2 days ago has continued to play out in real time. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had announced Saturday it was closing the strait again, warning ships to stay clear, citing Israeli strikes in Lebanon that killed at least 20 people, according to Lebanese civil defense, strikes that occurred just hours after a ceasefire with Hezbollah had taken effect. United States Central Command once again disputed Iran's claim, saying American forces continued to monitor the situation to ensure traffic kept flowing through the waterway. Vance said millions of barrels of oil had moved through the strait in recent days, regardless of Iran's announcement. And maritime intelligence firm Tanker Trackers reported that Iran has exported approximately 36 million barrels of crude oil since June 15th, with another 36 million barrels currently transiting the strait as of Sunday. So even as Iran's military declared the strait closed for political and diplomatic leverage, the actual flow of Iranian oil exports through that exact waterway continued at a scale of tens of millions of barrels. That contradiction, a stated closure alongside continued massive oil exports, tells you precisely how this maritime dispute is actually functioning. Iran uses the announcement as a bargaining chip in Switzerland while continuing to profit from the waterway whenever it serves Tehran's economic interests to do so. There is one more detail from today worth setting straight, because a minor diplomatic incident briefly became a bigger story than it deserved to be. Video circulated Sunday appearing to show Qatar's prime minister walking past Vice President Vance without greeting him at the Lake Lucerne summit, fueling reports that Vance had been snubbed. A U.S. official directly disputed this characterization to Fox News, calling it complete nonsense and explaining that the American delegation had just spent hours together with the Qatari team. So there was no need to re-greet someone they had already been working with for an extended period. Whether or not that explanation fully satisfies the optics of the moment, it is worth noting clearly that the substantive reporting on the actual negotiations, the deconfliction mechanism, the IAEA access, the frozen assets arrangement, all moved forward regardless of this particular photo controversy. Vance has now left Switzerland, telling reporters before boarding Air Force Two that the U.S. delegation left a lot of our team, and the Iranians left a lot of their team at the resort there to keep on working at it. Witkoff and Kushner remain behind to continue the detailed technical negotiations. Vance's heightened visibility throughout this entire process, traveling personally to Pakistan, to Switzerland, appearing on CBS and Fox in the same day during the Reconstruction Fund controversy, and now leading these talks in Bergenstock, has drawn increased scrutiny given his widely reported consideration of a 2028 presidential campaign. Both Trump and Vance have faced what multiple outlets describe as searing criticism from within their own party over this deal, with Republican hardliners explicitly comparing it to the Obama-era nuclear agreement that Trump spent years attacking for failing to actually terminate Iran's nuclear program. Senator Lindsey Graham, speaking from Switzerland during these same talks, said the United States will control the Strait of Hormuz, that America will charge a fee for all those who go through to pay for the operation, and confirmed plans to expand the Abraham Accords within calendar year 2026, signaling that some Republican hawks are trying to find their own version of victory within a deal many of them still deeply distrust. Here is the complete picture as of tonight, June 22nd, 2026, day 114 of this war. Iranian President Pezeshkian called the Lebanon deconfliction plan a major victory for his country. A new 5-member deconfliction body, the United States, Iran, Lebanon, Qatar, and Pakistan, will oversee Lebanon going forward, with Israel notably excluded, reportedly leaving Netanyahu in a state of panic. Vance described a mechanism where unfrozen Iranian assets would be used to purchase American soy, corn, and wheat for the Iranian people under joint U.S.-Qatari oversight, calling it a classic Trump deal. Iran agreed to readmit IAEA inspectors, which Vance called a major milestone. The Strait of Hormuz remains in dispute, with Iran claiming closure while exporting 36 million barrels of oil since June 15th alone. Talks continue at Bergenstock, with Witkoff and Kushner remaining behind. And Republican hardliners, including Senator Graham, continue pushing their own competing vision of what victory in this deal should actually look like. America, here's my question for you tonight. Iran's own president just called this agreement a major victory for his country. On the very same day, America's vice president was explaining how Iran's frozen money would be redirected to buy American farm goods, and how a new Lebanon oversight body has reportedly left Israel's prime minister panicking because his country was left out of it entirely. Here is what I want you to tell me right now in the comments. When the country you went to war with is publicly celebrating the peace deal as their own victory, what does that tell you about who actually won? And do you believe the soy, corn, and wheat arrangement Vance described is a genuinely smart, classic Trump deal? Or is it the same Reconstruction Fund controversy from last week wearing a different label? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Witkoff and Kushner remain in Switzerland tonight working through the details, and we will be here the moment the next development breaks.